Welcome to the Sales and Operations Planning Podcast, where strategy meets execution. This is a show for cross-functional leaders who want to go beyond process and better understand what drives effective execution. In each episode, we explore the behaviors, decisions, and leadership practices that turn alignment into real business results. If you want to lead with more clarity, improve collaboration, and drive stronger outcomes, this show is for you. My name is Laurent, and today we're talking about why so many companies treat their S&OP or IBP transformation as a project when it should be treated as a journey. Most organizations define success using project language. We implemented the process, we deployed the technology, we trained the teams, we completed the rollout. Then everyone moves on to the next initiative. The problem is that S&OP was never meant to be a project. It was designed to become the way a business makes decisions. And decision-making never stops, which means the journey never stops. What I've observed over more than 20 years with clients across the globe is that the biggest threat to an S&OP transformation isn't technology, data quality, or even process design. It's leadership change. A senior leader sponsors the transformation. The CEO, COO, CFO, or supply chain leader actively drives the agenda. Meetings improve. Decisions become clearer. Accountability increases. The organization starts building momentum. Then that leader leaves. A replacement arrives with different experiences, different priorities, and often little understanding of the journey that came before. The process remains, the templates remain, the dashboards remain, but the behaviors start disappearing. Decision quality drops, cross-functional alignment weakens, and slowly the organization starts drifting backwards. I've seen this happen repeatedly, not because the process was poor, but because the organization never built a mechanism to sustain leadership continuity. Ironically, many companies invest heavily in implementation, but almost nothing in succession planning. And that brings us to another overlooked issue: leadership onboarding. Most executives joining a company receive onboarding on strategy, governance, financial performance, and compliance. Very few receive onboarding on how the business actually makes decisions. Very few are taught the role they play in sustaining S&OP or IBP. As a result, new leaders unintentionally bypass governance, create side conversations, request separate reports, and slowly undermine the very process they inherited. Not through bad intent, through lack of understanding. Which leads me to HR. Perhaps the most overlooked function in many S&OP transformations. Most organizations view S&OP as an operational process, so HR stays on the sidelines. But S&OP is fundamentally a leadership capability. It's about behaviors, decision-making, accountability, and cross-functional collaboration, all areas where HR should play an active role. Why isn't S&OP part of executive onboarding? Why aren't leadership behaviors embedded into succession planning? Why aren't incoming leaders coached on how decisions are meant to flow through the organization? Most organizations spend millions teaching leaders how to communicate, influence, coach, manage performance, lead change, build engagement. All valuable skills. But very little time is spent teaching leaders how to make cross-functional trade-offs, challenge assumptions constructively, resolve competing priorities, make decisions under uncertainty, balance short-term pressures against long-term consequences, behave consistently in executive forums. In other words, they develop leaders individually, but rarely develop leadership teams collectively. And S&OP exposes that gap. A leadership team can score highly on every leadership assessment and still perform poorly in S&OP. Remember, sustainable transformation is not about process. It's about people. The best organizations understand this. They don't build projects. They build capabilities. They don't depend on individual champions. They create leadership systems. And they recognize that every leadership transition creates risk for the maturity of the process. So let me leave you with 3 questions. If your executive sponsor left tomorrow, would your S&OP process continue to improve? How many of your board members have been formally onboarded into your S&OP or IBP model? And what role is HR playing in protecting the behaviors that make the process successful? Because projects end, journeys continue, leaders come and go, but organizations that embed decision-making capability into their culture continue to perform regardless of who sits in the room. And that's when S&OP stops being a project and starts becoming how the business runs. Thanks for listening.